This is My Child Will Thrive, and I'm your host, Tara Hunkin, nutritional therapy practitioner, certified GAPS practitioner, restorative wellness practitioner, and mother. I'm thrilled to share with you the latest information, tips, resources, and tools to help you on the path to recovery for your child with ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorder, or learning disabilities. My own experiences with my daughter, combined with as much training as I can get my hands on, research I can dig into, and conferences I can attend, have helped me to develop systems and tools for parents like you who feel overwhelmed trying to help their children. So sit back as I share another great topic to help you on your journey. It's episode 11 of the My Child Will Thrive podcast, and here's what's coming up. So the pyramid that you're referring to, we talked about this earlier, and it's a really great pyramid and shows that about nutrition, prenatal being the foundation, and then the primitive reflexes from there, and then moving up to the different aspects of, learning and social management and brain development and learning as you move up. Do you want to just walk through those different levels? What types of things you saw and successes you've had by using movement therapy with them? A quick disclaimer before we get started. My Child Will Thrive is not a substitute for working with a qualified healthcare practitioner. The information provided on this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat your child. Please consult your healthcare practitioner before implementing any information or treatments that you have learned about on this podcast. There are many gifted, passionate, and knowledgeable practitioners with hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of study and clinical experience available to help guide you. Part of our goal is to give you the knowledge and tools you'll need to effectively advocate for your child so that you don't blindly implement each new treatment that comes along. No one knows your child better than you. No one knows your child's history like you do or can better judge what is normal or abnormal for your child. The greatest success in recovery comes from the parent being informed and asking the right questions and making the best decisions for their child in coordination with a team of qualified practitioners in different areas of specialty. Now on with the show. So I want to welcome today to the podcast Adeena Pelburg. She has some very interesting information to share with us today around movement therapies that you could be using with your children. So Adeena, maybe you can start off by giving everybody an idea of who you are and what you do.
I am a holistic educator. My background started as a first grade teacher in the classroom, and that came to stop when my husband suffered a spontaneous brain hemorrhage. And in the course of his rehabilitation from that traumatic brain injury, which actually involved not just the left parietal lobe of the brain where the bleed was, but he ended up either having a seizure, blacking out, we'll never know, falling down a flight of concrete stairs onto the sidewalk, and then he was immediately paralyzed and his whole brain was injured. And the hemorrhaging had been going on for a month and a half because the neurosurgeon didn't want to do more damage by going in, because that's the seat of the sensory motor cortex, and he said the seat of all human function. That was 20 years ago. When my husband finally had surgery, there was so much damaged brain tissue, they had to take out a lot of that. And so the MRI showed a hole in his brain. And as my husband was rehabilitating, I just was so incredibly amazed that this man has a hole in his brain and he's relearning how to dress, how to bathe, how to button his shoes, how to do things like hold. One example that continually comes back to me as inspiration is hold an apple and still talk without dropping the apple, or hold the apple and talk. And sometimes we see kids like that. They can't do two things at once. They're like either totally engrossed, like in their Legos, and they can't set switch, which is the term used for switching attention or maintaining that attention, inhibiting, filtering out, and still maintaining and being present. And one day in the course of my training in every morning and day as his caregiver, I just was filled with this passion. If he can relearn how to do this, there is a way to reach every child. And I started working privately with children. I needed to have that flexibility to be home with my husband and be able to take in everything that he was and I was learning in the course of his brain-body system rehabilitation, and I started applying it and using it. And rehabilitation for a traumatic brain injury has changed so much in the last 20 years, and there's a whole field called neurorehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
But there was so much that I just started doing that had such a great impact. Multisensory learning was something that I started to do before I actively took Orton Gillingham courses, Lindsay Wood Bell courses, evidence-based research courses. And so when parents say to me, you know, my child tried so hard, but she still struggles to understand, to comprehend, or I have to remind my child all the time what to do, because I'll say, go upstairs, get your shoes, get your jacket, come down, or go brush your teeth, put on your pajamas, and I'll read you a book. And like 45 minutes later, they come down and they've got this great Lego project. They haven't done anything. Or like, where are you? What have you been doing? Or my child is so impulsive, I'm afraid he's going to hurt himself. I'm afraid he's going to hurt his sister or others. Another classic is my child is so rigid in his thinking. Mm-hmm. And you find that especially with kids that don't have a sense of time. They don't have that sense of delayed gratification. They want something now that's very, very rigid. And it's hard to get along with socially. Mm-hmm. You know, you as a parent know that, you see that. They don't know where they are in space. They lean into other people. They're into other people's stuff. They're touching things. So these are the types of kids that you know they need the extra support. And the brain is not compartmentalized. Like you can't always see that a child has these issues and also is struggling academically. Sometimes you have a kid who is doing okay academically. Mm-hmm. I had a child who came to me and had been on medication for ADHD, played the keyboard really well, juggled really well. He was 13, and yet when I asked him to open his hands up to test a primitive reflex called hand grasp, which is when you put your fingers into a newborn, their hand should grasp around you so tightly that you can literally lift the baby up. And that is God put that into our systems as humans, and you see that even in mammals. You see that with animals that cling for protection and survival. And he couldn't open his hands up. It hurt. And he couldn't close his hands up. So they were both confused, the mother and the son. Why is that he can do so much with his fingers, but yet he has really messy handwriting? And because we're not compartmentalized. Mm-hmm.
And I think that leads into a really interesting aspect too of this is the primitive reflexes. So do you want to just talk a little bit about that and how that's sort of the basis and root of where you start typically?
Yeah, I do. And I would say that the place to start beforehand is where you start with the nutrition, prenatal conditions and nutrition. The baseline is that if a parent, and your listeners, I assume are parents or people who care about children in their lives, even if they're not parents, maybe aunts, uncles, educators, you have to make sure that the child, most basically, is eating, sleeping, and pooping, really frank. Just get it out there. Because if not, then there's this, what do you expect from the child? What do you expect from yourself? You're off. You know that you're off if you're not having bowel movements regularly. There's toxicity that's backed up. This is stuff that's supposed to be eliminated. So you have to be eliminating. And the next step, if you think about a pyramid, and this is a hierarchy of learning, the next level up from that is going to be your primitive reflexes, because the primitive reflexes you can see by ultrasound and sonography in utero. They start to develop in utero. And as the spinal cord is developing, the brainstem is the first part of the brain that is developed. And these are reflexive movements that the fetus and then the baby has no conscious control over. It's coming from the brainstem. So that means it's uncontrolled movements that are put there for protection and survival. And that's great. An example would be ATNR, which is the look of the bow and arrow. The baby turns its head, one arm will go out, the leg on the same side will straighten, and then the opposite side of the body bends. The elbow bends and the knee bends. Mm-hmm. And that's a perfect position for whether it's breastfeeding or bottle feeding, because the baby will stay there. Because the opposite side is relaxed. But then typical development shows that after a while, the baby will integrate that reflex, and then you'll have to, the baby will hear something, and you'll have to say, oh, come back here, come back, let's continue eating. And you have to bring the baby's attention back. If that's still hanging around, then it's stuck in a phase in the brainstem, and it's not linking up to the other areas of the brain. And that's really important to understand, that the brainstem is the only part of the brain that's fully functional at birth. There are other parts of the brain that are functional, but we have to link up to them. And the way we link up to them is through movement. It's the baby's movements. First the belly wiggle, and then learning how to lift its head and turn its head, and then the reflexive movements of the other bodies from the core out to the limbs, and then turning over, rolling over. This uninhibited movement is what links up, creates first really dense networks of nerves in the brainstem, and then allows that to branch out to the cerebellum. And the cerebellum research has shown in science that it's long been known for its role in having a very big role. It's a very big player in really complex motor tasks and motor planning tasks. But there's now a frontal cerebellar root that's been able to be mapped out. And so we think about the frontal lobe is executive function. Mm-hmm. So there are all these pathways that are interchanging. So that's why we can't say that, oh, well, why is it that if I have this, well, but I still have that? Because all the pathways are overlapped. So the reflexes are the basis. If things are hanging around, that means that the child is, in a sense, at that cognitive level where they were as a child. Mm-hmm. And so they're stuck at that developmental age. And we know babies don't hold attention, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you think about everything, the checklist of what babies don't hold attention, babies move around a lot, those are the things that when we look at children in school, oh no, there's a problem. But we don't say there's a problem with babies. Mm-hmm. So you can see that correlation, how it's appropriate for babies, but it's not appropriate for children that are older, and they're stuck there. And so we need to help them along with what's been proven to be movement-based intervention, and a lot of tactile, touching, non-invasive body work, the hugging, the rocking that naturally parents have done for many years, and recently, in the past couple decades, has been minimized because we've got convenient baby seats, car seats that come out, and the baby just sits there, and the scare SIDS, don't put the babies on the tummy, and now we have a specific tummy time, instead of the baby just being on the floor in a blanket and being okay. And that's super important for the baby's ability to learn how to play, learn how to reach, learn how to explore. And by doing that, they start to wiggle, they start to jiggle, they start to figure out what to do. And it's so individual, because each child goes through these stages. Some go through the stages a little bit quicker than others. And so if they go through a stage a little bit too quickly, let's say they don't crawl or they skip crawling altogether, it may have an impact on their learning. I say may because there are authorities out there that say it will. Mm-hmm. But I have parents who say, well, I had another child who never crawled, went straight to walking, and she never had a problem. It's not impacting her activities of daily living. And that's really key. Because if you take a sample of the population at large, you're going to find that everybody's got retained primitive reflexes. But is it interfering with the way they're living their life? Mm-hmm. So if it is, then we want to look at why. And that's the big thing that I look for. Why is a child having these social issues? Why is a child struggling? Is the child sensory seeking? Is the child falling off their chair? Why are they falling off their chair in class? Why are they, so many kids will play with their hair. I've had this with girls. They just play with their hair and they put a ponytail in the front of their head. There are receptors, tactile receptors in the hair. And you see this a lot with little children when they're falling asleep, they'll just start to twirl their hair. And we all know that when we get our hair cut, we love the feeling of someone else putting their fingers through our hair when they shampoo our hair. It's really relaxing. And so what they're doing in an environment where they're not successful is they're not consciously making a decision, but they're instinctively doing something that's relaxing them. It's annoying the teacher. It may be distracting to other students. But if we can give them what they are seeking and relax them outside of school, they won't be doing it. And that's what I found in my practice.
Yeah. So when parents first come to you, what does it look like, and how do you assess the children and see if they have the retained reflexes, and where you start with them?
There is a way to evaluate for retained primitive reflexes. And it changes a little bit. The two primary programs that I use are the Moscatova Neurosensory Motor Reflex Integration, and that's a mouthful. So Dr. Svetlana Moscatova is the one who has called together work, and because she's a terrific synthesizer, as well as she's got a chiropractor. She went to medical school. She's a manual massage therapist. She has a PhD in educational psychology. She has this wealth of background that she's been able to use to create new protocols. So Moscatova Neurosensory Motor Reflex Integration is what we call, in short, MNRI. So I use MNRI reflex integration methods, as well as they have protocols for regulating sensory issues, for regulating bedwetting, a lot of things that you just find they're reflex related, and rhythmic movement training, which is RMT. And rhythmic movement training was founded by Harold Blomberg, who is a psychiatrist in Stockholm. He found that by using rhythmical movements with the body, both passively and having the person actively initiate these movements, very similar to the way babies move, like rocking on their back, rocking on their stomach, passively rocking, that he had so much more success than when the patients were on medications. And the whole brain-body system and the sensory systems were just calm and regulated. And together with Moira Dempsey, who lives in Melbourne, Australia, they have put together a program called Rhythmic Movement Training. Now, the person who is like the resource that everyone who I've ever spoken to always says, reflexes, they associate with Sally Goddard Blythe.
Yes.
And Sally Goddard Blythe is the director of the Institute for Neurophysiological Psychology in Chester in the UK. And I have not taken her INPP courses for reflex integration, but she is still the gold standard. If you want to have a textbook, look something up, you can look at her books, and she's written great books, as well as, like tomes, textbooks. So there are different approaches, and these approaches are not all exclusive. Like, I'll give you an example. Harold Blomberg thanks Dr. Moscatova for teaching him isometric techniques for integrating reflexes. He didn't know that. And that's part of his program. Dr. Moscatova thanks Harold Blomberg for teaching him rhythmic movement, and she incorporates that into her reflex integration. So everyone's got, their thing, but they also are synthesizing from others in order to find what works best.
Yeah, which is why I know you chose to do training in both the different areas, because you continue to seek out what works the best, because, we can always learn more, which is fantastic. So in terms of just, for the listeners, we will put links to all those resources and website on the My Child Will Thrive website under this podcast, which is podcast number 11, so that you can go there and do that, and some links to some of the books that Adeena is going to refer to throughout the podcast today too. So if you're looking for these resources, you can find them there. So you have a parent come in and you're going to be looking for the primitive reflexes. When you do that, how does working with a practitioner of this kind look like for a parent? What are they looking to in terms of what is the procedure? I know it will be different for every child because it will depend on what that assessment shows. But what types of therapies and exercises can they be looking at doing, and where would they do them, whether at a therapist's office or at home?
First thing I want to address is that it's an individualized program. Mm-hmm. When you look at programs that are online and it's like, oh, it's a basic program and just do this and it'll help. I'm not going to say it's not going to help because you may see some advancement, but everybody's got a journey and it's always going to be their own journey. So you're going to look for something that's going to be individualized to them. I typically look to see if a child has tactile sensitivity, either hypersensitivity or hyposensitivity, because I can't really touch them, even though in the hierarchy of learning, the tactile is above the infant reflexes. But if I can't touch them, they're not comfortable with anybody touching them, then I need to regulate that first. Mm-hmm. So they're more receptive and they're calmer and they're not dysregulated. So we have to make that adjustment to make that individualized. And in terms of what do, I can do things that are teaching children and parents what to do and then follow through at home with a home program, as well as things that I've trained in and, for hundreds of hours, besides, practicing besides for my actual traveling to trainings. Mm-hmm. The practicing that are more involved, and I can do that when they come to me. How long will it take is a question that everybody wants to know, every parent. It's money. How long is this going to take? And the question that is a really important question to ask yourself as a parent, and if it's not something that the parent asks, I prompt that question. What is your goal? Because the purpose of integrating the reflexes is to optimize your function and performance in life. So there are elite athletes that are using this to gain that edge. If you're looking to break a world record, you want to do something that's going to help you do it more effortlessly so that there's differentiation in your body without you having to think and work so hard. Mm-hmm. So my motto is working smarter, not harder. It's not exclusive to me. I just saw it on my husband's Accounting Today cover of his magazine. I just saw it on Bodywork and Massage. It's not exclusive to me, but that's my motto that I always say. We want your brain-body system to work with less effort. It should be less effortful. And what's your goal? Is your goal that you want your child to get better grades because they're struggling academically, they're not learning to read, they're dyslexic, or you're not even sure if they're dyslexic, but they've got really slow processing? Well, that would be like at the very peak of your pyramid. And we have to work at what are the building blocks that are going to help you get there. Mm-hmm. So that will take time. If a child is having behavioral, social issues, we work at the level underneath of that, because that's life management. And Tara, you said that you were going to put up a link for this. Yeah, I think it's a great pyramid of learning. I've seen several hierarchies. Certainly, by no means is this the only one that's out there, but I happen to like this personally. Anybody else can, put out great hierarchy of learning also. So when you're talking about, but my child is not processing, she's not understanding that her brother's manipulating her. Mm-hmm. And so I get mad at my brother, and my child is not picking up, and I'm mad at the teacher. The teacher may be doing everything that she can or he can for the child. But again, you're working way high up. You need to work lower down and then build up. So you get that finished product.
Yeah. So the pyramid that you're referring to, we talked about this earlier. And it's a really great pyramid, which we will link to in the show notes as well, and shows that what you were talking about at the very beginning, which is that nutrition and prenatal being the foundation, and then the primitive reflexes from there, and then moving up to the different aspects of, well, learning and social management and brain development and learning as you move up. Do you want to just walk through those different levels? And the great thing about this link to this pyramid that was created by somebody else is that you can click on the different aspects of your child that you think are the challenges, and it shows you where in the pyramid they lie. So you can start to see where you might want to begin to work with your child.
And again, it's just a way to make things a little bit more concrete for parents. And that's, I personally, as long as it's age appropriate, include the child. Because I don't like anybody to talk about me or tell me what to do without me understanding why. When I include the child, even children in nursery, I explain that we want their brain to be able, and their body to be able to work together. They're like, okay, that makes sense. I'm not being told what to do, because then you're going to get a lot more resistance. So we have the prenatal and nutritional conditions. Then we have your primitive reflexes. Above the primitive reflexes, you'll have your sensory that develops. And we're talking about in utero, as the baby's developing and the baby comes into the world. And then you have the motor part of the brain-body system. And then the sensory perceptual, like your speech development, your auditory tracking. And I want to make a note to your listeners that a visual system is the last system to come on board and to mature. When a baby's born and mom's holding it in its arms, the baby can only see from the crook of your elbow. You're holding it up to the face, and it's fuzzy for the baby. And as the baby's put on its stomach and it learns to lift its head, it's going from near point, and then it's developing its vision to far point. And that is huge. When you think about that, that's what kids are doing all day long in the classroom. They also are reflexively, there are reflexes that are there if you give them the opportunity to use the reflexes, and then they won't need those reflexes anymore to lift their head up, because the head is the heaviest part of the baby. And I had an 8th grader who had so many issues. Everything in her body is so heavy. And when I put her on her stomach and I had her mother here, she couldn't lift her head up. So I said to the mother, how much tummy time did you give your baby? And she said, oh, I never put her on her stomach. Oh, now we know why she can't lift. We have to go all the way back. She can't lift her head up. So she's exhausted. What you're seeing as being defiant or not understanding, and the mother wants to know, when is she going to understand the value of money? Whoa, that's way abstract. This child is just trying to keep her body upright in space without falling over. So that's important to know, that the visual system is the last, and you want to give that the opportunity. So when you start to think about doing eye tracking, make sure that you're doing things that are even below that. Your vestibular system is balance, where you are in space, proprioceptive, and that the auditory, that what you're hearing, because your baby's hearing right away. The baby's hearing in utero, the music of the mother. Music and brain, we know, is huge. And then the processing skills go above that. So auditory memory, visualization, phonemic awareness, that's big. You know, everyone says reading readiness. What this is about learning readiness. These are children who don't have that learning readiness. So we want to make sure that they're ready to learn, not just have the reading readiness. And attention and focus. Because before this, the baby doesn't have attention and focus, and that's perfectly normal. But we want to make sure that they have all the building blocks underneath of that. And then you just begin to see, I see that the kids just suddenly have a sense of time. I started working on one reflex, and within a week and a half, mother called me up and said it was over last summer and they were doing summer homework. All of a sudden, she understands place value. I said, we were working on CLR. And that's one of the things, spatial, temporal. And then communication skills, oral language, body language, word finding. Above that is life management, behavior, self-control, social skills. And then at the very top is academics. You have your reading, writing, your math, being able to get your thoughts out motorically through your hands. And that'll go back to, well, if they're having a hard time holding the pencil, if it's not an easy grip, and they're using too much of their shoulder, their back, and maybe they'll be able to have neat handwriting, but they won't be able to sustain it. So you might not have a problem with your that you're seeing with your child early on, but it may start to manifest when you increase the load in the upper elementary and middle school, when their tasks and the pace at which those tasks are loaded up.
Now, it is a great pyramid to take a look at least to get some idea of a framework for parents to look at it. So we will link that up in the show notes. Maybe just to wrap up here, Adeena, let's talk a little bit about if you can give us some examples of some of the kids that you've worked with and what types of things you saw and successes you've had by using movement therapy with them.
I'll start off by saying that one of the children that I worked with in a middle school was just so much calmer that the middle school coordinator had a IEP meeting with the parent, and the parent said, well, we're working with Adeena Pelburg. I'm like, oh, we used her for tutoring, like mother said. And so this woman the coordinator was blown away by just how much calmer the child was. And when the child first came to me, she was an 8th grader, and her breathing was as quick and shallow as a newborn infant. So she was in a hypervigilant state all the time. She was in the constant fight or flight. So she was stuck in her brainstem. And so the first thing we had to do was just calm her down. Before we even got to, I did some MNRI protocols for just calming her tactile system. And who would have thought that tactile was it? But that's what worked for her, to just get her to start to breathe so that she felt like she was more present in her body. And when a person's present, that's when you say, oh, executive function. They're able to start to think about things and to project and to think about other people and their responses, because they're present within themselves. They're fully present. They're making eye contact with you because they're okay with themselves. The woman at the coordinator referred another child to me, and she said, this child is uneducable. She's been on medication since 2nd grade, and she's now at the end of 6th grade, and it's had such horrible side effects that the child won't go on it anymore. And now she's just uneducable. She jumps up spontaneously from her seat, and she's not able to be in our school unless something happens. So I started with her in the summertime. And, the first thing was just camp. Oh, camp is more free. If she starts singing in the middle, that's fine. She's a great kid to have in camp. But remembering your bathing suit, your lunch, your water bottle, or not remembering them. And there are other things that I weave in besides for reflex integration. That's part of being a holistic educator. And by the second week, she was remembering her lunch. She was checking that she had everything. She was doing the home program that I was giving her with her mother. And the nerve-wracking part was, okay, what's going to happen in the school year? The school year, with the exception of one subject, which was really a leap for her. But she got over that. Behaviorally, she was fine. And everyone was just blown away. And recently, she just went from the lowest math right up to the highest math.
Wow.
And again, behavior is not the issue. They there's been a lot going on in that family, and I'm happy that this comes up now at this point, because I want to leave parents with a really important key. When you're working with your child, and anybody who is doing primitive reflex integration should be giving you a home program to do. It's essential that you are fully present with your child. You can't just go through the motions. It's what you're doing. You can't be thinking about other things. The child will pick up that energy. The more, and ideally, if a parent is anxious, as most people are, we want our kid to get there, and we'll do it for our kids, but we won't do it for us. When a parent receives this work themselves, because oftentimes parents will have the same issues. So when parents receive this work, there's this energetic shift, and children will progress so much faster, or they'll not need to have nearly as much, or not at all, because it'll just resolve. Because there's been this energetic shift in the parent. But when the parent's working with the child, you have to be so fully present with your child, with love, with patience. Find a space in the house where you don't have other kids, and it's quiet, and you can give your full presence, because the more coherent and integrated you are, the better it's going to be. So with this child, it's been a lot going on in the house. Grandmother was sick, and that they have legal responsibility for broke a hip, and there's so much going on.
Yeah.
That they know she has a difficult time still with initiating her homework, inhibiting distractions, but they know that they haven't been consistent. So they're owning it. And it's not coming back at me as like, you haven't done your job, because you have to be consistent. And the homework has to be done on a consistent basis so that we are activating the neurological pathways and that we are creating those neurological pathways until the point where they are smooth, consistent, fluid. The movements are exact, they're rhythmical, and they're really effortless. Like the child can do something else, they'll talk to you, and they'll still be moving their body. Mm-hmm. And that's when, that's integration. But then even after integration, you want to keep it up because you want the body to become automatic with it. Mm-hmm. And so I know this sounds like, oh my gosh, but I'm going to say it because I want to put it all out there. Keep it up, even after, don't just drop it. Mm-hmm. Keep it up, even if it's rotated in while you're working on other reflexes, because you can't work on everything at once. You start with some, and then you will work on others. Others might resolve while you work on others, and others while you're working on some, and they're integrated. Others might pop up that hadn't been there before because it's a brain-body system. But you want to work on things for 10 to 12, between 8 to 12 months, to be able to get everything really smooth so that your child is optimized.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. I mean, we know the neuroplasticity is there. We know there's the impact to change the brain, but we also know that consistency is king or queen in getting it done. So I thank you for that. Adeena, where can people find you or people like you if they would like to look at adding these types of therapies into their kids' protocols?
You can find me at www.holisticeducationalsolutions.com. My email address is adeena@holisticeducationalsolutions.com. Right now, my website is unavailable. It's under construction, so email is the best way to reach me. And when you're looking for somebody to work with you, you can go onto the MNRI. Just Google MNRI. You can Google RMT, for rhythmic movement training. Or you can search for your local occupational therapists, speech therapists, physical therapists, and ask if they've been trained in MNRI, in Moscatova, in rhythmic movement training. Mm-hmm. And if you have somebody on the team of an occupational therapy clinic who is, and then, okay, that's where you want to go.
That's great.
Because that's an integral foundational piece.
And we'll make sure to link, again, in the show notes on the My Child Will Thrive website, your contact information. And as I said before, we'll link to their organizations as well so that people can get to that. The other thing you're going to find this week on the My Child Will Thrive website is we'll also link to a cheat sheet we have on for primitive reflexes and how they impact your child and what you can do about them. So that should help you get kickstarted along with what the conversation today with Adeena. I can't thank you enough because I know you've spent many, many years studying, learning, and searching for the right answers and continue to do so. So I hope to have another conversation with you again sometime soon.
And it's never too late. Everyone should know, just because your child's at a certain age. My husband's 20 years out of his brain injury, and with the methods that I'm learning now, huge advancements. So there you have for neuroplasticity.
Amazing.
There's no end.
That's the best way to end this one on. So thanks again, Adeena, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. So that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me this week on My Child Will Thrive. I'm so passionate about giving you the tools and information you need to help your child recover. And as they say, it takes a village, so join us in the My Child Will Thrive Village Facebook group, where you can meet like-minded parents and stay up to date on everything we have going on at My Child Will Thrive. This is Tara Hunkin, and I'll catch you on the next podcast or over at mychildwillthrive.com. Me again. Here I thought I was all done for today, but I forgot to mention something I'm super excited about that I've been working on for quite a while now. I wanted to do this episode today, not just because I'm heading off to the Autism One conference, and I know a number of you may be as well, and I wanted you to be prepared for that, but also because I'm really excited to announce that I am producing a summit for everybody to listen in on for free. That is called the Autism, ADHD, and Sensory Processing Disorder Summit, which will air from June 19th through the 28th for 10 days, and during which time you can watch the interviews for free. I have a fabulous list of speakers to talk to you on all different types of subjects, from everything from biomedical interventions to nutritional to different types of neuro rehab and functional neurology, and many, many more things. Essential oils as well, in terms of how they can support certain functions in the kids' bodies. So I'm super excited about that. Can't wait for you to hear more about that. And I will be making sure that there's a link in the show notes for you to sign up for the free event as soon as possible. So otherwise, you can head over to www.Autism, ADHD, and Sensory Processing Disorder Summit. Long name, yes, I know, but hopefully easy to remember, .com. And you can sign up there for the free event too. Anyway, thanks again, and I hope you have a great week. Talk to you soon.